Hey guys, Youngblood with you for the 45th episode of the Inbox. Starting off with a question today from Blue Noser 71170 saying, "Oh, blood of the young one, do you think that VIP transport will be a valid career in-game? My plan focus is taking shape and I'd like to focus on high-risk cargo transport, info running, and VIP transport. Maybe high-risk and general search and rescue here and there, basically non-combat focused, but I would want to be able to deal with trouble. My planned fleet is mostly a solo player, a freelancer max, Redeemer, Herald. Yes, aside from the info running, the Herald may make a great VIP transport if its speed is up to where I think it will be. Redeemer for when guns trump speed, VIP transport or search and rescue, maybe smaller high-value cargo items. Planning in a few NPCs, okay. So, I think as far as just your first question, do I think VIP transport's a valid in-game career? And yes, I do. I think it's something that CIG's talked about. I think there's some ships that are specifically designed with that in mind. We look at something like the Constellation Phoenix, and we know that that's one of the things that's going to excel out. The ability to take somebody from point A to point B in style. I think the 890 jump could probably do that for a lot of people. There's a couple ships that are super luxury that are designed to do just what you're asking it to do. So as far as careers go, I think that's the case. Now, there's probably going to be standards of what people are actually expecting out of your ship. So, for example, the Herald, which is a Drake ship, is not known to be a beautiful ship. It's not going to allow people to live in the life of luxury. So while it may be really, really fast and help to keep people out of trouble, I don't think you're going to necessarily be getting a whole lot of contracts from VIPs to haul them from point A to point B, unless perhaps they've got something going on where they're really worried about their lives and they know that you can get out of trouble there. I've mentioned doing something similar in the Redeemer, especially since it already has the seats on board. It's a big, scary ship as far as weaponry is concerned and shielding. It's going to be a really tough target to take. So if you want if somebody says, I have got to get to this system and I'm wanted and somebody's going to try and kill me, putting them in the middle of a Redeemer is a really good option. Putting them in a Herald may let you try and run, but ultimately you're not going to do much fighting. So I don't think the Herald's a great choice for that. Now, you're interested in already doing info running, so I think that's a good option to have in your fleet because it's probably going to be the best ship in the game in that regard. But yeah, as far as VIP transport, there's one thing here that's a little bit confusing. You mentioned that when guns trump speed for VIP transport or search and rescue, maybe smaller, high-value cargo items. So I think when you're talking VIP transport, you're talking about people, and then you're saying, I would also like to be able to take high-value items somewhere. And the Redeemer may do good at that. The Freelancer Max should do good at that, too. It's small-ish. It goes through the smallest jump points. It's got the 4 engines on it, so if you're not fully laden, it should be pretty fast. It's got decent durability to it. I think if it's a very small amount, the Redeemer's going to do well. But if you're looking to kind of carry a little bit more cargo, that Freelancer Max should do a pretty good job at it. Shadows A to B says, do you think getting into the same instance with a particular player or group for org missions will be an issue? I don't, but that's kind of predicated on CIG getting the servers and netcode to where they want it to be. For example, if they're saying that, we're going to get hundreds or thousands of people in an instance, then it's probably not going to be a problem at all, because even the biggest organizations are probably not going to be having thousands of people online all at the same time. Everybody's kind of got different schedules. Now, where things get more complicated is if instances stay for a while at like that 24-person range, that becomes probably a little more problematic. Now, there's different things that you can do. Like, you're supposed to be able to tag people as like your wingmen or part of your party, and then what'll happen is the game will try its best to keep you guys in an instance together. So when you jump in, you're jumping in together. You're not split up. Now, if the max instance size is 24 and you're bringing in 20 people, you're probably going to see that end up being a problem. But now, knowing the goals and the refactoring and Star Engine and all the different things that they want to do, I think it's going to be less of a problem than we all thought it was going to be. Alisher Shermatov says, what do you think will be added to the 300 series remodel? Maybe a toilet and a living area. The 300 series is in a weird spot, and it definitely needs some work, and I'm glad it's going to be done. There's been some, and I don't remember the guy's name. I'll try and find the link and drop it in the comments, but somebody kind of did a rework of how the space could be reallocated in that model, and it was a really well thought out design, and it made a whole lot more sense without having to change the ship as a whole. Now, the 300 series is supposed to be a luxury touring craft. It's supposed to be like a space BMW. The problem is there's nothing luxury about it right now, outside of having some leather paneling on the walls. The toilet, it does have a toilet, it's got a bed, but the problem is it's actually a cot that kind of slides out. And the toilet, I think, it went away, but there was early iterations of it where it kind of pulled out of a corner and it was just this tiny little triangle toilet. So I think it just needs to be redone so everything matches what the ship is meant to be. If it's meant to be a luxury touring craft, it shouldn't have this fold-out cot. It should have an actual bed, as far as, and that could still slide out, or somehow just visually looks better, because it's not what it's really meant to be. The 300 series, I would say, probably could use, brighter lighting. It could probably use, more screens and touch instances in the back. Some just finishing touches. But ultimately, when you talk about the 300 series, there's not a lot of internal space to work with, so you can't cram a lot of those amenities in there. So it's about making the space that's currently there feel better, and that's more about art and design. So I think toilet, bed, those are probably high items. You're probably not going to see a shower. I think they need to find a way, though, to make the cargo area kind of combine to be living quarters / cargo and have a functional way of actually getting it in there. Because right now, having to climb a ladder to drop a cargo box in there is problematic. I don't know what direction they're going to go with it. I think there's a couple different things that they could do, but ultimately I think the biggest changes you're going to see is trying to use the space internally better, and then also trying to find ways to make it more usable in the universe. And maybe what it ends up being is, there's storage on the left and right hand side of the pilot seat. You kind of walk down the hallway to get to the seat. Maybe one side doesn't end up having components in there. Maybe one side ends up being opened up, so you've got more room. And then you don't need a door on both sides of the ship. You just have a door on one. Something like that could end up potentially happening, but I don't know what they're going to do with it. Masashi Q8 says, how diverse the habitable planets will be. Animals and plants. Can CIG do something like No Man's Sky? So No Man's Sky was originally designed to really be completely procedurally generated. So, wherever you show up, it's supposed to be this totally crafted system based on, the engine and the different, mathematical equations that they had in place. CIG's taking a slightly different approach. They're doing procedural generation. However, it's like with an artistic touch. So they're going through and they're creating almost like a template, if you will. And it says, this is kind of what we want our forest sections to look like. This is kind of what we want our, desert sections to look like. And then what happens is based on the planet, they'll actually be able to apply that template to different areas. And it's not just copy paste. That's where the procedural generation actually starts to take place. The game, the creation is done in a way so it's totally unique, but it pulls on assets that are already existing to end up creating different things. Now, as far as animals go, I don't know. I mean, we saw the giant sandworm at CitizenCon, so, there's going to be some wildlife out there, obviously. I don't know how far they're going to take that. I would say initially at release, there's probably not going to be a whole lot of wildlife, but that's probably something that they'll start adding in down the line. I'm not really sure. We've also heard in the lore about things like Fair's apes on one of the different planets. I can't even remember which one right now. So there is mention of animals. There's been mentions of pets. We've seen the sandworm. So I think it's coming. I just don't think it's going to be something that's really popular, really common to see early on. Miles Hinksman says, how numerous will organizations be at release? Is there only 3 mining organizations or 100 to join? Organizations are forming now. They've been around for years at this point. For example, my organization, has, I think, 1,400 people in it right now. There's a lot of organizations out there that range from one-person organizations up to, 5,000-6,000, probably more than that. I haven't looked at it in a while. But all of those different organizations, I think there's 20-something thousand organizations. Now, they're all going to specialize in different things, but I can promise you that there's more organizations than 3 in mining. And then there's going to be a lot of organizations that are just bringing people in together that have similar play styles. And then they'll have different divisions. Like us, for example, we're going to have combat, bounty hunting, cargo, exploration, transport. There's so many different things that we're going to be doing. And I think that's going to be more common with organizations than anything else. John T. Burton says, question for you. What do you think is going to be the more lucrative profession, mining or transport? And what do you think is going to be more fun to do? Thanks, really enjoy the content. You're very welcome. Glad you like it. So I don't think there's going to be any just set most profitable career. I think there's going to be different things, though. Like mining, for example, you probably have higher highs but lower lows. If you go mining somewhere and you're not very good at it, or if you go mining somewhere and you thought there was a lot more valuable resources and it turns out that it's mostly crap, you're not going to make a whole lot of money. But there's going to be times where maybe you start mining, you break into an asteroid, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, this thing's full of diamonds. Like those are the types of things that are going to happen and give you some of those highs and lows with mining. It's almost like a sales job in a way. Transport is more consistent. It's more reliable. There's always going to be needing goods to go from point A to point B. It's part of the economy in the game. And you're not picking up jobs from somebody, you could always go out and kind of play the economy yourself. For example, if in Terra, aluminum is really cheap and there's an aluminum shortage in Magnus, you could end up buying it on your own, hauling it to Magnus, selling it high, and end up collecting a pretty big profit. So there's different ways to make consistent money transporting as opposed to mining. But I think you're going to have big payoffs less frequently in mining, but more stable payouts in transport, if that makes sense. And our last two questions today are patron questions. Starting off with Noakes PG says, "Good day again, STL. Has there been any confirmation of how planetary landings will work on Earth? I imagine that the whole point won't be to procedurally generate it unless it's covered in buildings. Thanks heaps." So, as far as planetary landings are concerned, we've seen a couple different things. When we look at the system lore, we find that a lot of times that there's several different landing zones. And I think that's going to be kind of what we're typically doing. You're going to go from atmosphere to planet at different landing zones. And for example, I think they mentioned New York City, Moscow, Paris, maybe. I don't know. There was like 4 in Earth. I can't remember. Kind of scattered around the globe. So what you'll probably end up doing, and there'll probably be something lore related that says like you have to go through these landing zones for like customs or to keep traffic down and limit accidents in the atmosphere. Something like that. I think once you actually get out of space and into the planet's atmosphere, once you've actually gone through that process, then you can probably go and explore anywhere. The entire planet's going to be procedurally generated. There's not always going to be like awesome things to see everywhere you go, but once you get to the planet, you should be able to go anywhere on the planet. So I think that's what we're going to see on Earth. I think that's what we're going to see on pretty much every planet. And in the Gamescom demo that we had, we actually saw them fly to Levski, and there was that little gate that they flew through, and then it took them down to the planet. I think that's a really good example of what you're going to see pretty much everywhere. On the last question is from Shepard. Says, "I have an Aquila. Will it come with a rover? Also, would you agree that the Constellation class needs a front landing gear? It looks weird without it." The Aquila is going to come with a rover. I believe it's getting the Ursa. But as far as the front landing gear goes, I personally kind of like not having the landing gear there. It kind of is different. It looks kind of, to me, you think it looks weird. I think it looks kind of cool. But ultimately, when it comes to the balance of the ship, it's rear heavy, big time. The engines are back there, the nacelles. It's got the Merlin back there. It's also got the landing and cargo zone. So it kind of makes sense that it just sits on its own back there. What's up front is skinnier, so it probably isn't necessary to be there. Now, what could be interesting is if you land on a non-flat surface, kind of like again, I'll go back to the Gamescom demo, where the Freelancer landed and it kind of got off kilter and it was hard for the guy to actually jump into the ship. If all of a sudden you've only got the landing skids in the back, and where you touch down, it hits towards the front or the back of the landing skids where it's not right in the middle, you may end up seeing the ship rock at that point, and that would be kind of interesting. But just from a practicality standpoint, I don't think it's really a necessity, and I don't really mind the way it looks, so I don't think they're going to be doing anything with that. So that's the 45th episode. If you've got questions, please get them in. I'll get to them as soon as I can, and we're going to keep cranking through these. So have yourselves a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.